About 25 years ago, give or take, in the month of December, Phil and I were getting ready to go to a church gathering, and we grabbed Tracy to ride with us, and we had this big blue van. Our son called it the Bear. It was just huge. At one time, it had been a conversion van that a family had used for camping. And so I hopped into the back seat, and I noticed something on the floor, and then when we got to our destination, Phil got out of the van, and Tracy and I were going to visit a little bit in the car. And as soon as he closed the door, I said, "Tracy, I think I just found my Christmas present." And she goes, "Oh, you did? What is it?" And I looked again, and I said, "It's a shop broom." And she goes, "A shop broom?" And I go, "Yeah, and I'll bet you anything it's my Christmas present, because we used the van to store the Christmas presents. That's why I had to let you know it was a big van." So anyway, we went inside to the party. When it was over, we took Tracy home, and as soon as she got out of the car, I said, "Honey, did I just find my Christmas presents?"
You really have to understand. This was no ordinary shop broom. This was exquisite in all of its beauty. It was the prettiest shade of green I had ever seen in my whole life. And the bristles on the end, they were soft enough that I could even rub them up against my face. This was a wonderful broom. Now that Christmas, Terri and I had agreed that we were not going to buy each other gifts because we wanted to use that money that we would spend for each other for the kids. But when I was in Kmart that day and they did their red light special, and I went to the back of the building where that little treasure was hiding, oh my goodness, I did this. I think it's calling Terry's name. It was saying, "Terri, Terri." You know, Terri has a passion for sweeping. Oh, she loves to sweep. Even today, at this point in her life, she loves to sweep. And when I seen that broom, because outside, when she's sweeping outside, she just has one of them little teeny things that you use in your house, and that doesn't cut it when you're sweeping patios and sidewalks and dirt and rocks. But this broom could handle anything. It was the best thing ever. And the best thing about it, it was less than $8. It was good.
You know, fortunately, I can't really remember. I mean, we look back and we laugh a lot. I really don't think I was mad at him. I was pretty amused, and I thought, "Really, Phil? A shop broom? If you were going to get me something after we said we weren't going to give anybody anything, you give me a shop broom?"
Not just a shop broom.
Well, anyway, so I just was thinking it was rather amusing, I guess. Maybe you remember it differently.
Well, what I can tell you about that day and that night is that when we went to bed, we went into the same room. We slept in the same bed that night. And the next morning, she was still in bed with me. And what I can tell you is that Christmas, I did not get a lump of coal in my stocking.
Hello, my name is Lewis, and I love Christmas. I love everything about it. The snow, the lights. I'm sorry. But most of all, I love the reason for the season. That's why this year, as a Christian, I got so tired of hearing that disrespectful phrase. You know the one. Happy Holidays. Every time somebody'd say it to me, I would give them a good old Merry Christmas right in their face. Booyah for the Messiah!
Stop getting riled up. You're gonna hurt yourself.
Mom! I'm trying to talk here!
Whatever. I'm calling Dr. Goldstein.
Sorry. I had to move back in with my mother after all this.
Tell the truth, sweetie.
Fine. Fine. I've always lived with my mother.
Against my better judgment.
Mom! Mom! Can I just tell my story? So recently, I went to the supermarket to pick up some eggnog. As I walked in, the guy standing next to the grocery carts throws a big, "Happy Holidays, mister," right in my face like it's no big deal. But guess what?
What, honey?
It was a rhetorical question, Mom. I am building the drama of the story.
Always so dramatic.
What? Oh, I'm the dramatic one? Oh, really? Anyway, the kid, this Happy Holidays punk, just got me riled up. So I grab the nog and I go to pay. The clerk rings me up, and what does she say? Happy Holidays. I was enraged. I was in a blind fury. I jump up on the counter, I grab the microphone, and I yell into it. It's not a holiday, people! It's Christmas! I'm mad as heck, and I'm not gonna take it anymore! Unfortunately, my foot slipped, triggering the conveyor belt. Now, bread and milk doesn't seem to be moving too fast, but a 175-pound man flies off that belt. And fly I did. Not like a majestic eagle or a Superman. I flew like a partridge falling out of a pear tree. I flew into a display of Chia Pet nativity sets. Thus, my current condition. And then something funny happened. A gift arrived for me. Mom, little help, please? No, not that one. No. Don't, to your left. Your left? No, the one that arrived! That's the one. Thank you.
You watch your tone with me, mister.
Huh? It was from Elizabeth. The girl whose checkout stand I'd commandeered. She'd given me a gift. At first, it didn't make sense. I didn't deserve anything good from her. Not the way I acted. I acted like a maniac. But then I got to thinking. I had been bound up in religion. And I didn't want to be bound up anymore. Religion is always having to be right. Grace, that's being right with others, being right with God. So this gift, I don't know what's in it. It could be more eggnog. It could be a Chia Pet nativity set. Doesn't matter. The real gift is better than either of those things.
Oh, you two are destined for wedlock!
Mom! Why did you do that? Why do you always go there? We're not going to get married!
It's a match made
I don't
in
even
heaven.
know her!
But you said she
It
was...
doesn't matter if I said she was cute!
Grace is when we get what we don't deserve and don't get what we do deserve. So that year that I got Terri the broom for Christmas, what I deserved, oh my goodness. I can't believe I did, I can't believe I did that. That year I did not get what I deserved for having a lack of sense and getting Terri a broom for a Christmas gift. And that year, Terri gave me the gift of grace because she gave me nice gifts, which I certainly didn't deserve. And on top of that, she didn't mention the broom incident anymore. That's grace.
We have 3 children, and our youngest is a son, Gabriel, and he chose to go to school in Minnesota. The other 2 stayed in Lincoln. And we would visit a lot with him on the phone and pray for him for tests. And when he was a junior, he had a big test coming up. And I'm sure all professors, all teachers would tell you every test is important. But for some reason, this test carried a lot of weight. I don't know if he was needing to bring up a grade. I can't remember anything about why he needed to do well on it. But I talked to him the night before the test to pray with him. And I said, "Do you feel ready?" And he said, "Oh, Mom, I'm just saturated. I probably am not ready, but I just couldn't study anymore." And I hung out with friends. So in the morning, his test was at 8. I'm up in the morning praying for him. And I'm asking God that, he'll give him the mind of Christ, that he'll bring to mind the stuff that he has studied, that he'll have a presence of mind, he won't be nervous. And then I say, "God, I know he should have studied more last night. And I know he really doesn't deserve your help." And gosh, the moment those words were out of my mouth, I heard God say, "Deserve?" He goes, "That's a moot point. Do you deserve anything I give you? Does anybody deserve anything? Deserve isn't even part of the equation." And I thought, oh my goodness. I really need to change my thinking. It's like I knew it, but I didn't know it. And so I think I even laughed maybe at the audacity of suggesting that God would help Gabriel because he had deserved to be helped. But it's a lesson that is, I guess it was 8 years ago. I think of it often. And now we're going to talk about just a little definition of gift, since we're talking about gifts. So when you hear the word gift, what do you think of? Do you think, oh, it's the thought that counts? Or do you look forward to getting something that you really, really want? Or when you receive a gift and it's something that you can begin to afford, or something you didn't even want to ask for? Or does it make it special because the person knows you so well, they give you something that you didn't even tell them you wanted, and they know it and they give it to you? So there's a lot of different pictures of what a gift can look like.
So for a gift to be a gift, it has to be something that's given. For a gift to be a gift, has to be something that's received. For a gift to be a gift, it has to be opened. And once you open that gift, then you have to use it. And if it's truly a gift, when it's being used, not only the receiver, but those around the receiver will receive the benefit of that gift. The greatest gift that's ever been given to mankind was when God gave us Jesus. But Jesus didn't become a gift until he was born to Mary on Christmas Day. God made flesh. And even at that, we as the receivers, we have to receive him into our heart before he becomes a gift to us. Or else it's not a gift. And then once we receive him, we have to open up that gift. And opening up that gift means that we allow him to come in and work within our hearts, and we begin to take on his likeness. We begin to live his likeness. We begin to walk his likeness. Several years ago at this point, when we were living in Lexington pastoring a church, we had some friends that were living in Kearney, and it was in December, and they called us and said, you know what, we're getting ready to go down to Omaha to do some Christmas shopping. Would you guys like to come? And so Crystal and I, we went with them. And I had no idea that I was actually going to do some shopping and buy something.
And he comes home with a microwave. Which everyone says, what's wrong with a microwave? Well, first of all, the reason I didn't go with him, because if I'd gone with him, we would not have come home with a microwave. Isaac was about 3 weeks old, and it was an unusually bitter, cold winter. Yeah, for it to be that cold in December, Phil went with some friends who had a van that ran on diesel, and it was so cold, it took them an extra day to get home, because they didn't know that, as Jim told me, you need to add additive to your diesel to keep it fluid, and they had an awful time getting home. So he walks in the door with a microwave. I said, honey, what is this? Why? I mean, you've got to understand that microwave cost what we made in a month. And I said, did I say I wanted a microwave? What are we going to do with this microwave? How are we going to pay for this microwave? We don't need a microwave. And if he hadn't bought that microwave in Omaha, he would have been taking it back the next day. But it was a 4-hour drive. It wasn't practical to return the microwave. So then, the next day we called somebody who was handy, and he came over and installed the microwave. And then I started baking potatoes and popping popcorn and warming up leftovers. And as much as I hated to admit it, by the end of the week, I loved my microwave.
That's right. Ephesians 2:8-9 says this, "For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourself, it is the gift of God, not of works." So the first thing the first phrase says that we have been saved by grace. And it says that grace is a gift from God. And it says it's not something that we can conjure up ourselves. It's not something that we can buy, pay for, but it's a gift. The word grace that's used here is the Greek word charis. And it's every time you read the word or you see the word grace in the New Testament, which is 127 times, it's always this word. And it means the divine reflection upon the heart as reflected in the life. And what that means is that when God comes and speaks to us, he speaks to our heart, who we are. And then we receive that, and we say yes to that. And that whole process is a gift. It's not because we were so good. It's not because we did the right thing. It's because he chose to come and speak to us. And then again, as he speaks to us, and we begin to change into his image, other people around us receive the benefit of that. That's what a gift is. That's what a gift does. Another definition of grace is this. Grace is more about right relationships with God and with others than it is about being right. Being right is a religion kind of thing. Being right is about the law. But grace is about right relationships with God and with others. That's more important, is to have that right, than it is to be right according to the law. This story, there's a story in Luke, the 15th chapter. And that story is called the Prodigal Son. In that story, there is a man, father, and his two sons, older and younger. One day, the younger son comes to the dad and says, "Dad, I want my inheritance, and I want my inheritance now." So I'm assuming that Dad tried to talk him out of that silly idea. But the son was insistent upon that. Now, because the father thought it is very important to me to maintain a right relationship with my son, he didn't decide to follow the law. What the law for that day and time said is, you know what? What you just asked for, your inheritance, while your dad is still living, your inheritance, while he's still making a goal of this ranch, this farm, this thing that he was working, what he was asking was like him coming up to his dad and slapping his face. It was like him coming up to his dad and spitting on him. It was like him coming up to his dad and taking his glove off and psh, 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 across his face. And the dad had every right to say, "You are no longer my son. I'm disinheriting you. Get out of my house and don't ever come again." The dad had every right to do that. That was according to the law. That was their religious law. But what was more important was having right relationship with his son. I imagine to give his son, so at that time it would have been about a third of what he had going on there, a third of that in cash. He probably had to go liquidate some assets to do that. And so that's what he did. And a few days later, after his son had got the money, he gathered up his things and he went to a faraway country. When he got there, he lived a wild and woolly life. He indulged in things that cost lots of money, had no value. After a while, where he was living, that area had a famine. And because of the famine, people stopped hiring other people. Because this young man had spent all of his money, all of his little friends that had gathered around him to help him spend that money, none of them acted like they knew him except for one person. And that person offered him to come and feed the pigs and to help himself to anything that he had. Or I should say, anything that the pigs had. One day he's sitting there, his stomach is growling, and he's looking at what the pigs were eating. They were eating what they called in those days pods. He decided to eat the pod. And the pod did not fulfill him. It wasn't enough. He didn't enjoy it. He was unfulfilled. And the thought came into his head, you know what? Even the servants, the slaves in my father's house, they have it better than I do. I'm going back there. I'm going to throw myself at my father. I'm going to ask him to forgive me. I'm going to tell him that I was wrong to treat him the way that I did. So he left the pig job. Now on the other side of that, Dad, because he had maintained right relationship with his son, he was always hoping, always having confident expectation that his son was going to come back home. So every day, there were times in the days where he would just stop and he would just look out across the horizon to see if he spotted anything. Anytime he heard a noise at an unusual time, he looked up to see if it was maybe his son coming around the corner. This particular day, he went out and he looked up, and on the horizon, the way that object was moving looked familiar to him. He waited a little bit more, and as the sun got closer, he recognized, that's my son. That's my boy. And so he went running out to meet him. And he was, his son was overwhelmed that his dad would come out to meet him, and they hugged and they cried, and the son said, "Dad, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have treated you like that. Will you forgive me?" And he said, "Oh, son, you've always been forgiven. You've always been forgiven." And so then he said, can I just come live in your house as one of your slaves, as one of your servants? And Dad stopped. He said, "No, you're my son, and you will always be my son." And so as they walked back up to the house together, the servants came out of the house to greet the son that had returned. And as they came out, the father said, "Go get him a ring and put a ring on his finger." That ring probably had something on it that was probably like the family symbol. And because he had that on that ring, that showed that he belonged to that family, and it gave him all the rights and privileges of that family. He could use that like a credit card if he wanted to. Oh my goodness. And then because his clothes were all shabby and they smelled of the world in which he had just come from, he said, "Get him a robe." And they threw that robe on him, and it covered him. Again, showing that he's part of a family, this family. And then Dad looked at the servants and he said, "You know that cow we've been fattening up? Get it. Cook it. We're going to have a party, a celebration, because my son has returned." And so that's what they did. And they started that thing once the cow got done. Oh my goodness. They invited the neighbors and family members that were around him to come, and they were partying and making a lot of noise. And later in the afternoon, early evening time, the older son comes home because he'd been working out in the fields and doing stuff. And when he comes home, he hears all this noise, all this racket. And he says, "What's all that noise?" as one of the servants came out to greet him. He says, your brother, he's come home, and your dad has given him a ring and given him a robe, and we even made the fatted calf, and we're having a party." And the older son just kind of just shook his head, and he just kind of, he was mad. He was mad. He said, "That's not right. I refuse to go in." And so when they said, "I refuse to go in," the servant went in and got Dad, and Dad said, "Son, why won't you come in?" He said, "Dad, all these years I worked for you. I have slaved for you. I've kept this place together for you. And never once did you offer to do anything for me and my friends. Never once did you offer to have a party for me and my friends." And Dad just looked at him. And Dad said, "Son, all that I have is yours. But your brother, my son, who was dead, has come back to life. He's come home. And we should celebrate that."
One of my fondest childhood memories is the way my mother would make Christmas so special. And we would bake, and she'd leave meat in the mailbox for the mailman, and take something to her hairdresser and the church secretary. Anyone that had any part of our lives received something out of our house, out of our kitchen. And then she would decorate. And we lived in an old farmhouse, a big farmhouse. Every flat surface, every knick-knack was removed. Every picture on the wall was taken down. I mean, you think you walked into a Christmas boutique or something. And she really liked nativities. And that's what she collected, so that's what we decorated with. And then she'd go outside and cut evergreens and use angel hair, and we'd have, one year it was gold spray paint. Everything got painted, spray painted gold, from baskets to pine cones to you name it. But I just remember hopping off the school bus, being so excited to run into the house and see on that particular day what new thing Mom had added, because she worked on this all month long. Well, as she got older, she wasn't, of course, able to do this because, first of all, the decorations were in totes upstairs in the attic. So when we'd go home for Thanksgiving, we'd stay the weekend, and on Friday, our family would help Mom decorate. And we'd go through that whole process, but, you know, she took a month to do it. We had to do it in 2 days. And I remember on Saturday, late afternoon, early evening, I was walking through the house, and I thought, we done good. It looks really nice. It looks just like Mom would have done it. And then I stepped into the living room where, no, it was the dining room, where the big upright piano was kind of in a corner. And on the piano, we kept Mom's favorite nativity. And it was when she had painted with her very best friend. It was a ceramic nativity. Her friend was an artist. And Mom always said her friend could paint the faces. That was the big deal. And so, you know, you'd have the wise men coming from the east, and the shepherds were making their way. Some of them were at the stable, some of them weren't there yet. The cow and the donkey were right beside baby Jesus because they had to keep him warm. And, excuse me, we had the whole length of this piano to create this story, this scene. And when I stepped in the room, I just stopped. It was just like I was frozen in my tracks when I looked at the nativity. But it wasn't the nativity that left me in awe. It was the picture that was left on the wall, that one that we had forgotten to flip out. And it was Jesus praying over Jerusalem. And I just thought, here is the story of Jesus. God's grace, the baby laying in the manger, and 33 years later, Jesus is crying. Will you hand me my Bible, please? He's looking over the city of Jerusalem. In Luke 13, can you just hold it? 34. Oops. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who continue to kill the prophets and to stone those who are sent to you. How often I have desired and yearned to gather your children together as a hen gathers her young under her wings, but you would not. So the very reason God's gift of grace was born, we talked about how it had to be received. These religious leaders would not receive him. And in that 400 years of silence between Malachi and Matthew, when there was no word of the Lord, no prophetic word, just silence, what had happened was the priests, the Levites, the religious leaders, they had made the law their golden calf. And so it was a law unto themselves. That law was more important to them than the people who the law was supposed to serve. And so at that moment, I could just feel the heartbrokenness of Jesus as he was praying there, because the law had become their baby. And so as I reflect on that, I realize that more times often than not, I'm not that much different than those religious leaders. I read the Bible, I interpret it, I have my idea of the way it should be, and then Phil's the one that gets the brunt of it. And I'll just say, why do they think like this? And why can't they see this is the right way?
And we pray for them.
And then I pray for them. And then when I'm praying, God speaks to me. Mm. And how can God be both firm and gentle at the same time? But he is. And he just tells me, Terri, you need to stop that. Lay that down at the altar and just receive my love and grace so you can give that to others.
I'm going to ask the worship team to come up right now. I'm thinking of the picture that Terri talked about. I've seen that picture in many different places. And sometimes when I think about that, or at least right now when I'm thinking about that, I'm imagining Jesus looking over my life. And I realize that when he's crying because I haven't accepted his gift, the gift of grace that he brings. He's always speaking to my heart. He knows me. Oh my goodness, he knows me. He knows you. I'm thinking of Psalms 139. And in Psalms 139, it's talking about how Jesus is, he has intimate knowledge of us. He knows each of us. It says here, I'm reading down here in the 17th verse, how precious it is, Lord, to realize that you are thinking about me constantly. I can't even count how many times a day your thoughts turn towards me. And when I awake in the morning, you are still thinking of me. He knows us. He knows what we're going to say before we say it. He knows what we're going to do before we do it.